Hip hop is culture. Hip hop isn't just a form of music anymore. It's life. It's a way of life, a way of living. You know, you wake up every day and you're surrounded by it. You know, me being from the Bronx, it's my life. I didn't have to look for it. I come outside and the graph artists are right there in front of my building. On the corner, they were breakdancing, you know what I'm saying? They was constantly battling on the corner, so it was my life. It was just like being Puerto Rican, you know what I'm saying? You're part of hip hop, being black. It's just hip hop where I was from, you know what I mean? So it was like culture to me. It was like part of my everyday life.
Pun is incredible. You know, he's just simply a genius. You know, I executive produced him. I also manage him, discovered him. You know, I love it. You know, it seems like, all our work efforts paid off.
What I gotta do, let y'all know, I am the nicest ever.
Forever.
February 7th, 2000. The hip-hop world lost a lyrical giant by the name of Big Pun, one of the greatest rappers to ever live. He was pronounced dead at just 28 years old. Pun wasn't just a rapper, he was a pioneer, the first Latino hip-hop solo artist to go platinum. A wordplay assassin, lyricist, and a Bronx legend. But behind the boss and the bravado was a man battling demons, both physical and emotional. Was his death just a result of poor health, or was there more to the story? From fame and family struggles to the pressure of the spotlight. Today we uncover what really led to the untimely death of Big Pun. It all started during his childhood. Pun was born on November 10, 1971 in the Bronx, New York. He grew up in poverty and was surrounded by drugs, violence and crime, having to face some of the biggest hardships you can go through, especially at such a young age. The first couple of years of his life were relatively normal. His parents were married, and even though they were poor, it was still a loving environment until early '76 when his parents got divorced. Pun was around 4 years old when things went south after his mother caught his dad cheating. After the separation, Pun stayed with his mother, who started to become neglectful as she focused more on enjoying her single life than raising her kids. She actually gave Pun's older sister Pina to her mother, so the two siblings were separated. Pun's mother started experimenting with drugs. She would always smoke weed with her friends and family members while Pun was outside playing. The breakup really bothered him. In '76, he started acting up and rebelling against his mother, cause he wanted his father back. One day, Pun and his mother went to meet a relative. She went up to the apartment to smoke weed with her cousin and her friend, while Pun had to wait downstairs. He was 4 years old, hyperactive, and needed someone to watch over him, but his mom wasn't there. Out of boredom, Pun then started climbing a wall at a park, getting on top of a roof of a building that was still under construction. He climbed until he was 4 stories high. At that point, he lost his balance and fell over, landing on a pile of bricks, breaking his leg, his arm and jaw. The security guards called upstairs to inform his mother, who was still smoking weed and enjoying herself. She supposedly ran down 32 floors and saw Pun on the ground. The first words he said were, "Don't worry, Mom. Don't cry. I'm alright." His leg was mangled and distorted. So was his arm and face. This was just one of many incidents where Pun would receive physical injuries, some of them permanent. This would especially become a problem after his weight gain. His mom blamed his rebellious face on the breakup. And it only got worse, cause shortly after that she married Pun's stepdad and got pregnant again. He didn't get along with his stepdad at all, cause he would abuse him almost on a daily basis. Pun would tell him that he's not his dad, and his stepdad would counter that it's Pun's fault that his father is gone, trying to make him feel guilty and weak, punishing him by holding it against him. Your dad left you because you're always acting up. You made your mom sad. You have to learn how to behave. Be a good boy and do this and that for me, or else your mom will leave you. So he would emotionally manipulate him at a very young age, making him feel like trash, helpless and weak, at a time when he was supposed to build confidence and feel powerful and in control. It really affected his growth and development, and could explain why people later called him controlling and possessive when he became an adult. He would act up, punch holes into walls, and turn red out of anger, clenching his jaw, after being tormented and forced to do things against his will. In 1978, when Pan was 6, he jumped off the roof of a daycare center and once again broke his arm. He ran the teachers crazy, at daycare and at school. So his mom took him to the doctor and he was diagnosed with hyperactivity. They put him on medication to calm him down. His stepdad didn't really understand what hyperactivity is, so he was more strict to him, thinking that he lacks discipline and respect. Pan would wet his bed until the age of 7, meaning around 79. That was around the time when Pan's mother started doing heroin, after finding out that her new husband is a heroin addict. Cause Pan's stepdad was using it to help him with his PTSD after coming back from the Vietnam War. Big Pan's mother would spiral into heroin addiction, and they started abusing him together. 2 heroin addicts abusing a hyperactive kid, making him do all the work for them, for their satisfaction, turning him into a slave almost, or an errand boy that they would beat up and abuse. They didn't care about him. All they cared about was drugs. They also found joy in mentally torturing him, forcing him to complete tasks in impossible time frames, knowing that he can't complete them in time, giving his stepdad a reason to beat and abuse him. It's like telling a kid, "I'm beating your ass because you weren't able to run 1,000 miles an hour," knowing damn well that no one can run 1,000 miles an hour. Typical bully behavior. Making him run from point A to B, buy him snacks, run to the bodega, buy groceries, pay bills, do A, B, C and D, just to come home to receive a horrible beating for not doing it fast enough. Making him once again feel guilty for something that's out of his control. It was always expected that he's not only perfect but also superhuman. At just 7 years old, his stepdad would burst into his room in the middle of the night, slamming frying pans together to wake him up, yelling, "Get up!" turning the lights on, scaring him, forcing him to do push-ups like he did while he was at the army during the Vietnam War, smacking him in the back of his head whenever he failed to do enough push-ups. So he gave Pan the same treatment he got while he was in the military. And this would go on for over 7 years. He would throw hard objects at him whenever he got mad, always comparing him to others to show him that they're better than him. He wanted him to be a military boy, the best of the best. And Pan would get so mad that he would turn red, making people think that he's going to burst, clenching his teeth, biting, chewing, and even eating rocks out of anger, which completely ruined his teeth. His mom was already too far gone due to her heroin addiction, so she didn't intervene or even show any type of sympathy or empathy for him. She was completely unbothered, and Pan's stepdad felt powerful having the boy's life in his hands and being able to do whatever he wants with him, with his mother right there saying absolutely nothing. The drugs supposedly changed her as a person, making her very selfish. She was purposefully ignoring what was going on and only cared about getting high. Every time Pan tried to speak to her and address his issues with his stepdad, she would say, "Play dead." The same phrase over and over again every time he got on her nerves or whenever she felt stressed out. And that hurt his feelings a lot. All he wanted was for his mom to love him at least half as much as he loved her. And that didn't change until the day he died. He would beg for attention and act up in school. Pan's mom would start beating him just like his stepdad. Sometimes she got so mad that she hit him with objects, like her high heel shoe for example. The heel cut his head and made him bleed. Another time she put a lock inside a sock and hit him with it, making his skin turn black and blue. His hyperactivity was giving his parents a reason to beat on him, thinking that he's acting up because of a lack of discipline and manners. This of course affected Pan's performance in school, even though he was a smart kid that excelled in subjects like English and history. He supposedly had an obsession with the English language and reading comprehension, memorizing big words from the dictionary and trying to read every book he could get his hands on, which surprised many, as no one expected a kid from the ghetto with heroin junkies as parents to show any signs of academic potential or even interest. Unfortunately, that side of Pan was literally beaten out of him by his stepdad, to the point where they wouldn't even let him go to school and instead go run some errands for them, which they could have and should have done themselves as they were the parents. They sabotaged Pan's growth on purpose, to always have a little errand boy around that fulfills all their wishes, while they're busy experimenting with drugs. Pan just lost the motivation, the drive and the energy to go to school. He started hating it, even though he was extremely bright. They would always tell him that his sister Nicky is smarter than him, even though she was more than 5 years younger. He desperately tried to prove them wrong and seek validation by learning big words from the dictionary every day, but they would just belittle him and not take him seriously. It really hurt him that they saw him as a disappointment. His intent was always to prove his worthiness, which always got shut down. He started stress eating at a very young age. He didn't put on much weight back then due to him being an errand boy and always playing outside with his friends. But the stress eating never stopped ever since his childhood and became not only an addiction, but the new normal for him. All the issues and random responsibilities he had at home really prevented him from having a normal life just like everyone else. Not only did they ruin his childhood, but they also sabotaged his future. He wasn't even a teenager when his mother and stepdad told him to quit going to school and start making some money, making a kid feel like a parasite. That's the type of treatment he got from the only people in the world from whom you would expect unconditional love. His stepdad's PTSD caused a lot of problems in the marriage as well, because between 1981 and 82, when Pan was around 10 to 11 years old, his parents would always argue and fight. The PTSD would cause his stepdad to attack his mother, tie her up and try to stab her with his sword. In another incident, he dislocated her finger. And these fights would not only happen at home but also in public for the next couple of years. Their constant fights, both verbal and physical, often entertained everyone on the block. He would also take out his frustrations on Pan, who was so stressed out that he would punch holes into the walls in his bedroom, in every apartment they moved into. And he would continue eating rocks, but this time he would eat the crumbs of the rocks in the wall. Part of the stress was him missing his real father. Just like all kids, he wanted love, attention and affection. His stepdad and mother gave him the complete opposite. That's why he would try to escape this environment by leaving the house. Between 1983 and 84, when Pan was at the age of 12, he started hanging out with older kids in the streets who would sell drugs and introduce them to a life of crime. He became a drug dealer and started making a lot of money, which he had to hand over to his mother and stepdad for the next 3 years until he was 15. That was around the time when his parents started using crack and cocaine, basically experimenting with all types of drugs in front of Pan and his sister Nicky. His mom even asked him for drugs directly, since he was selling, getting drugs and money out of him, while being too lazy and incompetent to actually provide for the family themselves. Sometimes they were so high that they slept 2 days straight, with Pan having to clean up after them. Pan also thought that it's probably better for him to find the best drugs to give to his mother instead of her going out to the streets and buying from random people who might give her a bad batch, something unsafe that might lead her to overdose. He and his sister had a little bit of a weight problem early on. It wasn't completely out of control yet, but the two were slightly on the chubby side, even though they were poor. The main reason for it was their mother's lack of control over their eating habits. She didn't know anything about nutrition and what kids really need to become strong and healthy. She just thought that being fat is healthier than being skinny, and she didn't really care what her kids filled their stomachs with. So the kids could eat whatever they wanted. Their mother had credit in about every store on the block, from Chinese takeout down to the corner bodega. A lot of high-calorie snacks that don't really keep you full or give you enough nutrition for the day. They would eat nachos, sweets, all types of fast food, drink juice, would go to friends and eat there, then come back and eat at home as well, saying, "No, I didn't eat yet." They sometimes had 3 to 4 dinners in one night, using this method of hopping from one place to another for some free food. But back then, Pan was hyperactive and was also active physically. Was burning most of those calories outside, running from place to place or playing basketball. Back then they called him Goya Jordan, and then he later even started boxing. So his weight back then didn't really worry anyone. He was just a slightly chubby boy. The fights between his parents at home encouraged him to spend his free time outside, and that allowed him to eat at his friends all the time. In 1986, Pan got the news that his real father passed away, and that was another traumatic experience for him. He shut down emotionally, and his anger and aggressiveness issues worsened. One day he came home from school frantic because he knocked a guy unconscious in front of the school. He thought he killed him. And back home there was even more fighting going on, with Pan's mom and stepdad constantly arguing. Right before they split up and divorced, Pan's mother lied and accused his stepdad of hitting her with a horsewhip. She played victim in front of the cops to get him arrested. The police asked Pan's sister Nicky if she saw him beat up her mom, to which she said no, which didn't stop Pan's mom from making his stepdad leave. She was pissed that her daughter Nicky didn't lie to get him arrested, accusing her of defending him and throwing an ashtray at her. When her husband walked out to leave with his belongings, she told him to take his daughter with him, wanting to teach him a lesson, knowing that he will beg her to take her daughter back from him. Pan at the time was rarely at home, couldn't stand seeing his stepdad nor his junkie mother, but out of love for her he would occasionally check up on her, mainly to give her money and drugs. She was late on paying rent and barely had money to buy groceries. One time she borrowed $2,500 from a doctor, who gave her the money to have sexual relationships with her. But his plan didn't work out, and he showed up at her front door with another man, wanting the money back, threatening to kill her if she didn't return it. His mom then sold her furniture, toys, kitchen appliances and other things to pay him the money back. But now the landlord was threatening to kick her out of the house because she was unable to pay her rent. By the time Pan was around the age of 14, his mother felt like he had a problem other than hyperactivity. They went to a doctor, but after just 3 visits they refused to see him again, telling his mom to be careful because Pan will either end up killed or he will kill somebody else, saying that he's gruesome, that he has a need to control, which his family believes was the reason why he was so controlling towards everybody. He needed psychological help, but never got it. He was evaluated and diagnosed as a potential sociopath, concluding that he had no empathy or sympathy for others, and no conscience. Some of the signs and red flags to his doctor were that he killed cats and dogs. As a kid, he used to throw them off of buildings and then laugh about it. This was all due to the psychological and physical abuse by his stepdad. He had unresolved trauma issues for the rest of his life, and psychological wounds that would never heal, causing his mental and even physical state to worsen day by day. His stepdad was more or less out of the picture now, but his mother's drug problems got even worse after the breakup. She would lock herself in the bathroom for hours and smoke crack, the same bathroom that her kids were using every day. They would notice a strange smell and even see aluminum foil in the bathroom and around the house. They also saw smoky, foggy-looking bottles with screw tops around the house, little jars with white residue laying around. And she would also start hanging out with some strange new friends, selling her body for money and drugs while getting high with strangers. She would go to the bathroom with them for long periods of time, while Pan and his sister were in the living room. Then she would start spending less and less time at home, and more on the streets. Sometimes she wouldn't come home at all. She was losing weight drastically and didn't really care to raise her kids, making them stay with strangers who were all drug addicts, forcing her kids to stay at a welfare house in Manhattan, surrounded by other low-income, poverty-stricken families. It was a disgusting and filthy place with shared bathrooms and toilets, drug addicts sleeping right next to kids, all types of filth. The last place you'd want your kids to live in. When Pan's sister returned home, She turned white and had to go to the hospital, suffering from a severe case of walking pneumonia. Doctors said that she would have died if she waited any longer. She was in the hospital for 2 weeks, fighting for her life. Pan was there crying, begging her on his knees to not die. She was around 8 years old back then, and Pan 14. The two then had to endure the bullying from people in the neighborhood, making fun of their mother, saying things like, "At least my mother ain't a crackhead," or "I saw your mom in Hunts Point selling her body for money." Pan and his sister Nicky were embarrassed and hurt, becoming resentful for the simple fact that they had to deal with the consequences, even though it wasn't even their fault. It was all because of their incompetent and reckless parents. Pan would ask himself, why can't I have a normal childhood like everyone else? The older he got, the more his mom's condition bothered him. He had a hard time dealing with her drug abuse. He became self-destructive. That was also around the time when the injuries he sustained from the accident years prior started to resurface, causing a discomfort while walking. The doctor also noticed that one knee was growing taller than the other. That's one of the reasons why he always walked with a limp. Another reason was of course his weight gain. But both problems obviously affected each other. His injuries and deformed body contributed to his weight gain as they prevented him from continuing to do sports like basketball and boxing. And the more he gained weight, the harder it was for his legs to carry him, deforming his legs even further and making him limp more. He also started to get into trouble while hanging in the streets. He got arrested for the first time after selling drugs for 3 years. He tried to run away from the cops but was then sent to the precinct near Story Avenue, spending the night in jail. This experience really scared him to death, and he swore to himself that he would never sell drugs again or do anything illegal. He never wanted to be in a cage again. But when he brought the news to his mother that he would stop selling drugs, she kicked him out of the house and forced him to live on the streets, right before he reached the age of 15, meaning in 1986. But becoming homeless and being back on the streets, walking from place to place with a limp, looking for shelter, with no one to rely on, made him go back on his word and start selling drugs again. His mother was unable to pay the bills and rent, so she and her daughter moved in with Pan's grandmother. Pan himself wasn't invited to come with her, but they had to move out anyway shortly after, because of the constant fights with Pan's grandmother. They then moved in with Pan's aunt, but he was once again not invited to come. Actually, they went no contact for a while. His mom didn't care what happened to him. He went from house to house looking for a place to sleep. Sometimes he would spend the night under a bridge, on park benches, or in abandoned apartments. His mother and sister then started to steal food from department stores. And they would also steal clothing to sell them in the hood, cause his mom had no job. Around the same time, Pan met his junior high school sweetheart Liza. If it wasn't for him being left back in 7th grade, he wouldn't have met her in 8th grade. On April 8th, 1987, Pan asked Liza to be his girlfriend. And that was the beginning of Pan's first and only relationship. She was Pan's whole world at the time. They had plans for the future and even introduced each other to their families. But then Liza's dad moved her up to Long Island to get away from him, cause he felt like Pan was a bad influence on her, which of course made him very depressed. He once again started to eat a lot. For months they went through the whole "I miss you" phase and tried to sneak out and see each other. Pan was just about to turn 16. His mom then started dating a new guy who owned his own business. She made Pan and his sister move into his office temporarily, while her new man looked for a new house with a pool where they all could live in. They all fell for it. Pan and his sister lived in a filthy office with a rat problem. It was near the Yankee Stadium. Pan was so depressed that he thought of hurting himself to make sure that his girlfriend Liza can visit him in the hospital. One day he threw himself from a storage unit above the office. They called the ambulance and rushed him to the hospital. This kid had already problems with his knees and legs after breaking them multiple times in his childhood. And now he's doing the same thing again, damaging his body. The stunt he pulled actually worked and brought these two lovebirds back together. Pun's mom and sister then moved into an apartment together where her drug problems worsened once again. His sister was only 10 years old and had to stay with an irresponsible junkie who turned the apartment into a drug house with no furniture. It was always filled with her junkie friends and drugs that her mom would either consume or Pun would sell to customers. One time Pun couldn't find the drugs he stashed and accused his mom of stealing them. In a panic, Pun stressed to her that he could get in serious trouble or get killed over this. She quickly denied the accusations and said that she doesn't care if he gets killed, which of course hurt Pun's feelings. He was just 16 years old. And she was the reason why Pun even went back to selling drugs, forcing him to make money that way. During the heat of the argument, Pun said that he was leaving, and his mom told him to go. So he once again left for a few months and they cut contact. It was during this time period when his mother started to neglect Pun's sister Nicky by leaving her all alone for days. She was out getting high with strangers. So Pun was forced to step up and play the mommy and daddy role. He made sure that she was safe, while he was around at least, and made sure that she was back home by 7 p.m. Their mother would start to disappear for longer periods of time now. Pun was technically kicked out of the apartment, but still came back every once in a while for his sister, and only stayed to keep an eye on her, all while her mom was out getting high, leaving a 10-year-old girl all on her own. It wasn't rare for her to be gone for over 4 days. One time she came back and Pun was chilling outside asking, "Where you been? What am I supposed to do with Nicky? You the mother, not me." And she became defensive, saying, "Don't question me." Pun felt that he was deserving an explanation, since he was the one left doing her job. "Nicky is hungry," Pun said. His mom then told him, "Here," as she passed some money to his hands, adding, "I was out getting money for you guys." There were still rumors floating around that she was selling her body for money. Nobody knew where she would get the money from. She would just disappear for days and then come back with money. Pun yanked the money out of her hands and ripped it up, throwing it over a business roof located in front of their building. He was almost in tears now, yelling, "We don't want your money. We want the mom. I'm not Nicky's mother. You are." They went back and forth for a while and then eventually continued the argument upstairs in the apartment. Pun then told his sister Nicky that he's hungry, so she threw together everything they had left, which was frozen chicken, peanut butter, hot sauce and rice. According to Nicky, it was the most disgusting meal ever. But Pun was still grateful and ate it, even though the chicken was still bloody. His mother then tried to throw herself out of the window in the middle of the argument. Nicky then screamed, "No, no, Ma," as Pun prevented her from jumping. She fought for a moment to get loose of him and said, "What do you kids want from me? I can't take it anymore." Pun let her go and said, "Go ahead. You want to jump? Then jump." He understood that she was just bluffing, trying to dodge accountability while using guilt trip tactics to get her way, emotionally manipulating little kids, threatening them with killing herself because of her own incompetence and foolishness, using it as a way to silence them by shifting blame and playing victim. Pun was clearly not the only person in the family with mental problems. But yeah, 97-98 were the years when Big Pun really got into hip-hop, studying all the legends, Slick Rick, Big Daddy Kane, Rakim, LL Cool J. Those are the ones that inspired him to start rapping as well. At first he called himself Big Moon Dog. His mother would always slap him, cause to her rap sounded like gibberish. She had a problem with him spending his free time rapping, while she herself spent more than a decade doing absolutely nothing except doing drugs. One night in winter '87, Pun woke up his sister at 2 a.m. to go look for their mother. She was gone for days and Pun was getting worried. It was a cold, snowy day and the two went through the ghetto late at night to bring her back. They found her at a crack spot. Pun grabbed her and said, "Let's go." But she started arguing with him. By this point she was heavy on drugs, went from marijuana to crack, cocaine and heroin. There were times when she wanted to get high so bad that she locked Pan's 10-year-old sister in a room so that she can smoke crack in peace. She would cry and beg her to let her out of the room, but she didn't care. One time Nicky caught her smoking crack with the same man that would later violate and molest her. Pan was the one paying the bills. He was always out hustling, so he couldn't always be there for her. One night both Pan and her mother were gone for over 4 days, and Nicky was starving, so she went and asked the neighbors for food. They let her in and allowed her to stay the night there. There were roaches and rats crawling all over her. She then woke up next to the same man that her mother was smoking crack with. He was fondling her as she slept. She was just 10 years old. The man picked her up from the bed and carried her to the floor to lie next to him. According to Nicky, he held her in his arms and held her crotch, rubbing her private parts until he fell asleep. Nicky then tried to free herself without waking him up, fearing that he will do even worse to her. She then ran away, and years later, when she was in her 20s, she told her mom what happened, to which she responded, "Stop looking for pity. It's not like he had sex with you. You probably deserved it." She didn't tell Pan because she was afraid that he would murder him and go to prison. The last straw came when Nicky was about 10.5 years old, meaning in summer, early autumn 87. Pan was about to turn 16. His mom was again away for about 4 days, and he didn't know what to do with his sister. She basically left both of them to starve. Pan could survive in the streets, but he didn't want his sister to be homeless as well. So he called his grandmother, who then invited them to come live with her in her one-bedroom Section 8 apartment on 133rd Street on White Plains Road. His grandmother, according to Nicky, was a crazy, abusive woman who treated kids like slaves, so it wasn't necessarily an upgrade over living with her mother. Nicky would always beg Pan to run away with her, so that they can live on the streets together, instead of living with either their grandma or their mother. But Pan didn't want her to live on the streets. A couple months later, in early 88, Pan's mom came to visit them at their grandmother's house. She looked beaten up, eyes black and blue and lip busted. She didn't say what happened to her, but they believe that she either got beaten up by a drug dealer for owing money or she was sexually assaulted. She also looked extremely skinny and weighed about 86 pounds. She didn't stay for long and went back to the streets to get high. Pan around the time had once again damaged his leg. He wore a cast from a sprain during basketball and could only walk around with a limp. One day he asked his grandmother, "If you don't like black people, why do you have black dolls all over your house?" The dolls were part of her religion, but he didn't really understand it. His grandma then got furious and jumped up off her chair, chasing Pan with a pair of scissors. He tried to limp away on one leg but then fell against the sofa. She then hovered over him and screamed, "Don't you ever question me. I'll stab you with these scissors." He then started crying out, "Why? Why are you hitting me?" as she continuously kicked him on his sprained leg. He froze up and looked at her like he wanted to knock her out. But he had a soft spot for his family and didn't dare to fight back. He just took the beatings like a quote-unquote man. That's what his stepdad taught him, telling him to not be a pussy and to just take the beatings head on. But his family never really had mercy for him, even when he had a broken leg, damaging it even further just to assert dominance. Aside from basketball and boxing, which helped him to stay in shape, he would also write and spit lyrics like the rappers he idolized. But the whole time, Pan was depressed because he couldn't see his girlfriend Liza. All he could do is think about her. One day he decided to move to Miami with his uncle instead of living with his crazy grandma. He thought a new atmosphere with positive influences would help better himself, so that he can prove to his girlfriend's parents that he's a good man. But right now, all he had in his life was negativity, baggage and trauma. He dropped out of high school and had nothing going for him. In order to avoid selling drugs again, he tried to find himself a job. He had a rich uncle that owned a factory where they made pockets of jeans. so he asked him for a job, for money and food. But his uncle just told him, "Yo, why don't you eat rocks?" His uncle gave him pebbles, literally handed him small rocks to eat. And this reminded him of the time he used to get so mad at his stepdad that he would eat rocks just to calm himself down. He couldn't rely on anyone or ask any of his family members for help. I want to show my uncle that I could get mines. I want to show him that I'm going to be big, that I'm going to be somebody. A few months later, he moved back to New York, but then once again got fed up with his grandmother. So he decided to sleep in the streets instead of having to deal with her craziness. His uncle didn't want him anyway, and he had no clue where his mother was. He slept at different spots of his friends or on park benches. On rainy days, he would sleep under highways. And he washed his clothes on the streets using rainwater. He also showered in his friend's house every now and then. His sister Nicky was begging him to let her live in the streets with him, but Pan didn't want to see her go through that. At her grandmother's home, she at least had a warm place to stay. Pan was always told by everyone in his family to man up, to go earn money, and to not be a parasite, to not ask people for help and be lazy, living off of other people's earnings. But he wasn't even an adult yet. He couldn't even ask his family members for a warm place to stay without them using it against him and constantly reminding him that he's a burden, someone who doesn't belong there, a lazy bum who'll never amount to anything. That's the treatment he got from them, and that's what his stepdad embedded in his brain during his childhood. And that of course had a toll on his mental health, cause childhood stress can significantly impact adulthood. Experiences like abuse, neglect, or witnessing violence can affect how people think, process emotions, and form relationships later in life. And these early traumas can alter brain development, making it harder to regulate emotions, handle stress, and build healthy relationships. It can also lead to anxiety, depression, increased risk of substance abuse, and even physical health problems. And Pan would later check all these boxes. No kid should have gone through that. His weight then started to go up and down. While he was homeless, he lost a lot of weight and became skinny. But then he moved back in with his grandmother and regained all the weight. A couple months later, in summer '88, they then moved to Miami, Florida together. Nicky was 11 and a half and Pan was about to turn 17. They spent an entire year there, but their lives were miserable according to his sister. Pan missed his girlfriend Liza and also his mother, even though she treated him like an animal. He still loved her after all the things she did to him. All he wanted from her was attention, and at least a fraction of the love he gave her. 2.5 weeks before Pan reached the age of 18 in late October '89, he moved out and went back to New York, while her sister and grandmother stayed in Miami. He was once again homeless and completely on his own, keeping his clothes in an abandoned building in the Bronx. He finally got what he'd been waiting for. He was once again reunited with his girlfriend. Her parents were still against it, but they decided to not care about their approval. He was struggling to make ends meet and support her, worked multiple jobs to save some money. Then, in desperation, after 5 months of being in and out of jobs, Pan went to his family's longtime lawyer in March 1990, asking him for financial help. Little did he know that he was about to get an answer to his prayers. The lawyer asked him, "Where have you and your mother been? I've been looking for y'all for years." Pan then asked, "Why?" "You won a $500,000 settlement from your mother's lawsuit against the city of New York years ago from your accident when you were little." He referred to the incident in 1976 I mentioned earlier, when the 4-year-old Pan climbed the walls of a building at a park until he was 4 stories high and then fell over, landing on a pile of bricks, breaking his leg, arm and jaw in the process. Before his mother became an addict, she was smart enough to file a lawsuit. 14 years later, at the age of 18, he's getting $500,000 as compensation, which marked a turning point in his life. Cause again, he had a lot of baggage, stress and trauma from his childhood. Basically lived like a beaten stray dog with damaged legs for the past couple of years. eating whatever he could find, barely surviving. But now, for the first time ever, he had money in his hands. This was the beginning of Pun's out-of-control weight gain. Up until this point, he had a great physique, described himself as a guy who loved sports, and had the exuberant appetite of an athlete. He was able to stay lean because he was always active. When you can't afford a car or even take public transportation, you walk. Now all of a sudden he didn't need to walk. While the money vastly improved his circumstances of living, it also led to him gradually gaining a lot of weight. In the early stages, he felt great, like a man, capable of supporting his family. He saw weight gain as a byproduct of success. At the time, he weighed around 180 pounds at 5'7", 82 kilograms at 171 centimeters, which means he had a BMI, body mass index, of 28, meaning already a little overweight but muscular. Definitely not obese, but a little more on the chubby side. Now that he had a large amount of money in his hands, he could go out and eat whatever he wanted. Take out his girlfriend, who he quickly married on May 5th, to the finest restaurants and order everything they desired, for the first time ever. He never wanted to go to bed hungry again, ate multiple feasts a day and stopped exercising entirely. He also stopped playing basketball and stopped boxing. Bought himself a car and would drive instead of walking, even when it's the shortest distances. Because as a kid, he would run up and down the Bronx every day. But now he could just drive and then get himself something to eat at a fast food drive-thru without having to walk there. He got used to the convenience and comfort pretty quickly. Even though things were going well for him financially, mentally he was a total wreck. All the trauma he suffered till this point started to take a massive toll on his mental health. He was still struggling with depression and PTSD, even after getting his dream of marrying his junior high school sweetheart fulfilled. He bottled up all the trauma, anger and frustration and was incapable of getting rid of it. He developed a fear of failing, a fear of not being good enough, not being strong or capable enough to provide for his family and save everyone around him. All this led to him developing a severe eating disorder, which resulted in his weight skyrocketing and getting out of control. Many people believe that food was Pun's drug of choice. Instead of popping pills, smoking crack or doing heroin like his mother, he would eat junk food all day. He would eat when he was upset, when he was sad, when he was bored, when he was happy. Suddenly everything revolved around food. His wife Liza didn't know how to cook, so they would drive to restaurants at least 3 times a day. He would eat takeout Latino and Asian food like a chain smoker that smokes one after another. Within just 3 years, meaning from 1990 to 93, his weight increased from 180 pounds to 300 pounds at 5'7", meaning from 82 kilograms to 140, at a height of 171 centimeters. His BMI was 47.9, class 3 obesity at age 21, more than double the BMI he had when he was 18. So during his marriage and while building a family, Pun ballooned up and got to a point where it was very hard to nearly impossible for him to stop gaining weight. And with his increase in weight, his ego grew accordingly. It was like you couldn't tell him anything. He dodged accountability and always knew better. Every time people told him to lose some weight, he would say that he's gaining strength and that he doesn't want to be weak and skinny again. On November 25th, 1991, Big Pun became a father and started to mellow down. Got used to being a dad and a family man. He did less and less physical activity throughout the day, but kept eating large portions of junk food. In early 92, Pun then came back to Miami to see his sister, and also his mom, who got discharged from the Good Samaritan Village Rehab in upstate New York. She had gotten clean again, so everyone got their hopes high that they could finally become a healthy family. Pun still wanted her attention and love. Nicky was 15 and Pun was 20 at the time. Everything was fine until his mother started asking Pun for money. Just like when she kicked him out of the apartment for stopping to sell drugs when he was 15. After asking him for money, Pun responded that he didn't have any. so she flipped on his wife Liza, calling her names for no reason. Pun then said, "I don't even have money to buy my daughter milk," to which his mother said something that they held against her until the day Pun died. She said, "I don't give a F." Pun then responded, "What? You don't give a F about my daughter?" And his mom said, "I don't give a F. That's not my problem." She was clean, healthy, and in great shape when she said it. And it brought back a lot of Pun's childhood traumas. He thought they were past that and could start fresh. But shortly afterwards, his mother relapsed and was in worse shape than ever. Then came the same old manipulation tactics. She tried to convince Pun's stepdad to trick Pun into giving them money. This was the same man that ruined Pun's childhood and tormented him every day, leaving him mentally scarred. Now he's trying to fool him into giving them money. But Pun wasn't the same little boy anymore. He had become a grown man with a family of his own. They got into a heated argument and fight, which escalated to the point where Pun pulled a knife on him, threatening to kill him. He used all types of manipulation tactics, guilt trips and gaslighting to get him to hand over some money, not caring about Pun or the life he built since the last time they saw each other. Pun felt disrespected and accused him of abusing him growing up. His stepdad denied the accusations and told him, "I was only strict to make a man out of you, and I did love you." Pun later told Nicky that the only reason why he didn't stab him is because he didn't want her to grow up without a father like he did. His mother would then continue to mistreat Pun's sister Nicky, and she also had a new boyfriend, who was the one responsible for reintroducing her to drugs. One time he stole Nicky's phone, beeper and pocket money. Nicky then told Pun about it, who then confronted his mother. She then became defensive and started defending her boyfriend. Pun then said, "Why are you always defending men over kids?" An argument broke out, and when his mother charged at him, Pun punched his mother right in her eye, making her fall back onto Nicky's bed. She then had to walk around with shades for a whole week because her eye was swollen. The same man who would always endure beatings from his family members was driven to the point of punching his own mother, who he always tolerated and loved for all these years. He was emotionally unstable and had developed anger issues that never resolved. He carried all his mental baggage until the day he died. When her new boyfriend came home and saw her face, he got into a fight with Pun, who then pulled a knife on him. His toxic and chaotic love and hate relationship with his mom made him let her move in with him and his family. That essentially prevented him from fully moving on from his past, because he basically brought the drama back into his life. And this once again led to an increase in weight gain. He already had an unhealthy lifestyle and diet, but now with his mom back in his life, the stress eating came back. In 1995, he was already over 400 pounds heavy, over 180 kilograms, meaning within 2 years he gained over 100 additional pounds, 45 kilograms, on top of the 300 pounds he had in 1993. Around that time, he was really trying to get his rapping career going. One day he met the Puerto Rican rap legend Fat Joe on 166th Street and Tinton Avenue, and this was in summer '95. He came to Fat Joe's neighborhood for his projects. Fat Joe would always go to the bodega nearby and get himself a little Diet Pepsi or Diet Coke and some chips. He pulled up by himself with a white Lexus LS 400, walked inside the shop, bought a soda and came out. All of a sudden he saw 4 Spanish MCs rapping in front of the bodega. They weren't even there when Joe went inside the building, but they stood there on purpose, wanting Joe to notice them. The one that stood out the most was Big Pun, who called himself Big Moondog at the time. The other 3 were members of his crew Full Eclipse, which later became Terror Squad. Joe was surprised to see a fat Puerto Rican rapper that's even fatter than him. He walked to his car and Pun told his group, "Chill, chill, y'all. Chill, chill," interrupting the cypher so that he can speak with Joe. Pun wanted to rhyme for him, so Joe stopped and listened to him. After hearing him rap, he knew that he was one of the great ones and decided to work with him. He was impressed by his rhyme chains and unbelievable breath control. The guy was under 6 feet, about 5'7", 5'8". He was easily 400 pounds, maybe even 450. His humongous stature separated him visually from his friends, but his words distinguished him from anybody on the planet. I'd never heard anybody in my life like him. Joe then opened up the passenger door and said, "Please, get in." The minute Pun sat in the car, he started telling his life story, and the two bonded automatically, becoming close like brothers. He told him about his drug-addicted mom kicking him out when he was 15, about him becoming homeless, forced to sell drugs, his uncle telling him to go eat rocks, his stepdad abusing him, his depression. He unloaded all his trauma as if Joe is a therapist. To Pun, he became something like an older brother he never had. "You're my big brother. You're the Don," Pun said. Joe wanted to take Pun directly to the studio, but he stopped him and introduced him to his wife Liza. Later that night, Joe brought him to the studio. He was just wrapping up his sophomore album Jealous One's Envy when he decided to put Pun on the songs Say Word and Watch Out. Watch Out features the same lyrics he spit when they first met. In October 95, he then put Pun on a record called Firewater, produced by Showbiz from DITC. He then got a $100,000 check from Loud Records when Pun got signed to the label weeks later. He used that money to buy Pun some jewelry. Afterwards, he signed him to Terror Squad Records. And from there, he started making appearances on different songs, music videos, and radio shows. In early '97, they started working on Pun's debut album Capital Punishment. He was a huge fan of the Notorious B.I.G. That was one of the first artists he wanted to work with, cause Big was the king of New York and Pun wanted to get on his level. This was right when Big had finished his double LP Life After Death. On March 7th, 2 days before he passed, he called Joe and talked about a possible Big Pun and Biggie collaboration. He and Joe were already friends, and as luck would have it, Big had already Pun on his radar at the time. According to Fat Joe, Big really liked Pun as an MC and respected him for his lyrical wordplay. Joe proposed the idea of doing a song for Pun's album, to which Big agreed. But then he got killed 2 days later on March 9th, and the collaboration never happened. Everybody knew that Biggie was the king of New York, and now with him gone, the throne was empty. Pun wanted the crown for himself and wanted to fill Big's shoes. So they started recording the album, and Joe immediately noticed how he was different from all the MCs he worked with. Pun would always fall asleep in the studio, due to exhaustion from carrying around all those extra pounds. People would then wake him up and he would go in the booth and record his vocals almost as if he was writing rhymes in his sleep. But he was always exhausted and had a hard time sitting in the studio without falling asleep, even with the music bumping at full volume. A year later, on April 28, 1998, the album Capital Punishment then came out and shook up the rap scene. It went platinum in July 98, just 3 months after its release. He became a legend in the streets, the first Latin solo rap artist to reach platinum status. He would give out money to homeless people, buy them food and hug them, take pictures with them to make them feel special. There was a time when he was homeless too, so he understood what they were going through and sympathized with them. But this infuriated his mother. With all the money he quote-unquote threw away to homeless people and neighborhood kids, his mom definitely felt like she was entitled to some of that money, since she gave birth to him. With her son being a popular rap star, she made sure to ask all she can. She drove him crazy, kept asking for money, and it often led to her telling him degrading things. She left crazy messages on the voicemail of his record label and was stressing him out by reopening old wounds. According to his sister Nicky, she was blackmailing him, saying that if he doesn't give her money, she will call the label or hip-hop magazines and tell everyone how he doesn't support his mother. As much as his mother drove him nuts, he liked the fact that he was needed. made him finally feel accepted and powerful. Pun loved her so much that he wanted to spoil her, even though she was a greedy, narcissistic psycho who cared more about drugs than her kids and grandkids. Pun told his sister Nicky that everyone thinks that he's wealthy, when in reality he had to always sell his jewelry just to give his mother some money and to get her off his back. And the reason why he was always short on money was a spending problem. Now that he finally had money, he was out of control, wasting everything in a short amount of time without thinking about the future. Spending all his money not just on food, but also jewelry, chains, clothes, new accessories, luxury items, material things, everything that's flashy. Fat Joe always criticized him for that, cause Joe had a spending problem too. He would spend $50,000 a month on clothes alone, and Pun was supposedly spending even more than that, without saving anything for a rainy day. He was very short-sighted, wasn't really thinking about the future, which is also reflected by his weight problems. He was like, I don't care, I'm ballin' now. He felt like weight watching and eating healthy, being on a diet, is something ballers don't do, cause he was quote-unquote starving and living healthy while he was poor and homeless, living a humble life when he had nothing. Money was the tool of his downfall, but it made Pun happy that he could support his mother now. All his life they told him to man up, to go get money, that he's useless, not deserving sympathy or a place to stay. And now finally he became the man that they wanted him to be. Aside from his stressful relationship with his mother, Pun also had problems with his wife. He would let out all his anger and frustrations on Liza, take out all the pain and trauma he had on his wife. Every time his mother reopened his wounds, he would take it out on Liza, cause he felt like she was the only person he could be vulnerable around. In front of everyone else, he was wearing a mask, pretending that everything is fine. Then he would come home and dump all his emotions on the person that was closest to him. And sometimes he became abusive, both physically and mentally.
Yo, I changed my life, make my wife forget the tears from the pain and the physical abuse, give her back her best years.
He would also cheat on her with groupies and fans who would throw themselves at him now that he's famous. Pun would sleep around but only love his wife. At least that's how he rationalized it. And he would even tell his wife about it. She knew that he was constantly sleeping around. It was almost like a one-sided open marriage for him. To show Liza that he would never replace her, he would buy her jewelry and quote-unquote make up for it with material things, which of course contributed to his spending problem. Pun was always straightforward with his cheating and made it clear that it's purely a physical thing. His wife, on the other hand, had numerous love affairs and cheated behind his back. Pun was at least honest and straightforward about it. One day, Pun's sister Nicky got a phone call from her, and she wanted to confess. She was in tears and extremely worried, since she got herself into a situation she didn't know how to get out of. Liza expressed to her that she cheated on her brother for the past year and a half, meaning since early '97. The affair partner was the son of a grocery store owner down the block. She wanted to leave Pun, saying that her affair partner is holding her stash of money for her. She'd been saving up the money that Pun would give her. Liza even said that she was not in love with Pun anymore, and that she tried to make it work for their 3 kids, saying that she's been planning to leave him for a while now, and that the new guy is not the reason for it. Liza's mom knew about the affair the whole time and encouraged her to leave. Pun's sister Nicky never told him. So these 3 women kept it a secret, and Liza kept cheating on him while he was away. Word started to spread around in the streets, and Pun eventually found out about it. That was another devastating blow to his mental health, and he started eating even more. The affair partner was then dealt with. They supposedly beat him up and made him leave town. That was Liza's first affair, but not her last. She hit closer to home later. Pun always thought that, aside from his siblings, Liza was the only woman he could fully trust. Someone he thought loved him unconditionally, while all his other family members loved him under the condition that he provides. And if not, they threw him out like garbage. So Pun found out that Liza thought of him the same way as all the others, that he's not enough. That had been one of Pun's biggest insecurities growing up. She stabbed him in the back just like Pun's mom did during his childhood. Someone for whom he made a lot of sacrifices. Liza was the only positive thought he had in his youth. He went through a depression during their time apart. And the first thing he did after getting a lot of money was to marry her. Marrying her was all that was on his mind while he was homeless, poor, and struggling from all the trauma. And now he found out that it was all for nothing. And it contributed heavily to his weight problem. One day he told his sister, "Nicky, you don't know Liza like I do. She's not as innocent as you think." That was confirmation for her that he had found out about her first affair, without Nicky telling him anything. And he was now suspecting that Liza is seeing another guy. She would cheat on him while Pun was either out the house or when Liza was out to run some errands, with Pun resting on the sofa too tired to move. She would sneak around, hide money for her escape, and do all types of messed up things behind his back, thinking that she could outsmart him. But Pun installed a hidden camera in the room to catch her in the act. And that's how he found out about everything. He saw the footage of his wife cuddling, smoking weed, and kissing on his couch, with none other than Pun's paternal brother, all while Pun was out touring. This is the same brother that Pun didn't want in his house. He had told Liza to not let him in, so she not only disobeyed him, but also cheated with him, after Pun had already forgiven her for the first affair. But that's the reason why there was a camera in the house. The footage of Pun pistol whipping his wife came from that exact camera. He placed it there to catch his wife in the act and uncover her cheating. By that time, Pun had already seen the footage and the two were constantly arguing. Pun had assaulted her quite a few times by then, to the point where their kids informed Pun's sister Pina about it, and she had to interfere. She actually paid him a visit with her husband. But Pun tried to convince her that he never put his hands on her, which was obviously a lie. Pina saw it with her own eyes. Pun and Liza were still in war mode the day the footage of the pistol whipping was taken. It all started because Pun was looking for his gun, and he couldn't find it in the spot he usually hid it. Liza and Pun then went back and forth, accusing each other of having moved the gun. But it was actually the husband of Pun's sister Pina, cause it was just laying there out in the open where the kids could reach it. But Pun thought it was another thing that Liza did behind his back, and the whole thing turned into an argument. She was already hiding things from him, like her cheating and his money, for example. And now Pun is under the impression that she's doing the same thing with the guns. With Liza being in full control of the guns, Pun would be helpless and powerless in his own house. He thought Liza took his guns to use them against him during their next fight, so he was getting angry about it. Liza was then informed by Pun's sister that her husband hid it behind the bed, so she went and gave Pun the gun. But to him, it seemed like she only gave it back because Pun put the pressure on her. He didn't know that it was Pina's husband that hid it, and Liza was talking back the whole time. So Pun got mad, and as she turned to walk away, he hit her with the Mac-10, making her fall on the sofa. He then leaned over her and continued yelling. After exchanging a couple of words, he then smacked her on the side of the face with the gun. Liza then screamed out in pain and ran upstairs to get the shotgun, ready to shoot him if the argument escalated any further. Pun couldn't walk up the stairs. He just looked up and yelled at her, telling her to come down and talk it out. She then left and they didn't see each other for a whole month. This incident did not just happen because he was mad about a gun. He was also mad at her because of the cheating. Her infidelity had been eating him alive mentally. Last time a rapper that called himself the King of New York got cheated on by his wife, they tried to turn him into the biggest joke ever, which almost cost him his career. And Pun was definitely not going to let that happen. He had already enough problems, both mentally and physically. But yeah, just like Biggie, he got cheated on by his wife, so it was eating him alive. No one could ever find out about this, that this big gangster Pan does not have his woman in check, giving the impression that he's something like a cock that pretends to be a gangster. It would have definitely damaged his reputation and career. They then reconciled and decided to stay together for the kids. Pan was also dependent on her. He couldn't even use the shower or the toilet without her help. Pan weighed around 500 pounds at this point. He signed up to a gym to lose some of that weight, but quickly gave up on it. His wife then tried to change his diet by buying healthy food, but Pan managed to manipulate the people around him into buying him junk food without anyone noticing. So he would pretend to eat healthy with his wife, but then when she wasn't around, he would let others buy him food and then eat in secret. His mom would cook him healthy meals, and he would pretend to stick to the diet, while fully knowing that she would go to bed at around 10 p.m. That's when his friends would bring him buckets of food while his mom was asleep. He made little kids buy him chicken nuggets and sneak them into his room without anyone noticing. Even Fat Joe's wife would buy him food without Joe's knowledge. Just like during his childhood when he would lie to his mother about not having eaten yet, just to get some additional meals, he was lying to the members of the terror squad, saying that he hasn't eaten yet and that they should go get something to eat. He figured out a system to get food from all directions without having to lift a finger, pretending to be on a diet and watching his weight. He was only fooling himself, thinking he's doing himself a favor by fooling others, who were only trying to help him. And to make things clear, not everyone tried to help him. He had a lot of yes men around him. And that obviously contributed to his rapid weight gain, even after reaching a point where you would assume that it's physically impossible for him to get even bigger than that. The yes men, his ego, the trauma, and the stress eating made him go down a slippery slope. And things only seemed to get worse and worse. Now he had to worry about his newfound fame and career. Always had a tight schedule, touring, shooting videos, recording songs, not just for himself but also for his crew, the Terror Squad. Fat Joe's third album was just about to drop. Pan understood that Biggie's legendary phrase, "more money, more problems," wasn't just a meaningless, braggadocious line. It reflected the truth, cause the whole world expected him to be this super lyrical superstar that drops one hit after another, out-rapping his competition with every verse he drops, having a strong impact on the culture with every album, holding the game in a chokehold, just like the deceased King of New York, the Notorious B.I.G. All while being a couple 100 pounds overweight, cause that had become part of his brand, the thing he was most known for. And he kinda felt like he had to be fat, thinking that that's what his fans love him for. They would look at him differently if he was skinny. So losing weight wasn't really that high on his priority list. But soon he would realize that his weight actually affects his career. How are you supposed to be this untouchable, godlike figure in hip-hop when you're a wreck not only physically but also psychologically and emotionally? Diagnosed as a sociopath with PTSD and depression, childhood trauma, eating disorder, and enough money to buy himself as much food as he wants. All this contributed to his weight gain. In December '98, Pan came to Miami to visit his family, and they went to the doctor together to get a health check for him. The doctor asked him, "Do you want to see your kids grow up? Do you want to be able to do things with them?" To which Pan said yes. And he even expressed what bothered him, saying that he would like to fit on the rides again at the amusement park, so that he can ride the rides with his kids. The doctor said, if that's what you want, you need to start changing your eating habits and start getting in control of yourself, or you won't make it to see the millennium. So the doctor told him that he might die within a year if he continues. After that, Pan had everyone buying him fruits, but it didn't last long. He continued making people buy him junk food. In February 1999, Nicky and Pan went to the fast food restaurant chain White Castle in the Bronx, and he ordered a 24-piece family pack. Then he turned to Nicky and said, "Order what you want, Nicky." And she was like, "I thought you just ordered for all of us." To which he responded, "Nah, that's for me." He went right back to consuming fast food, like a chain smoker smoking one cigarette after another. During the Grammys on February 24th, 1999, Pun begged Joe to leave the event shortly after walking on the red carpet, before the show even began, due to him being in pain because of his weight. He called a couple of doctors to inform himself about the price for a possible weight loss surgery. He was determined to get it done, even though he was scared of doctors and surgeries. But then one of his family members told him that it was too dangerous, and Pun immediately changed his mind. It was around the time when he couldn't even perform on stage anymore, as he was always out of breath, always tired, couldn't stand for more than a couple of minutes, which obviously affected his career, cause it doesn't make sense to do shows when you can't even rap 50% of the lyrics due to your breathing problems. Even though one of the key reasons why you're so respected in the game is your breath control. He had these super long rhyme chains that he would rap fast, but he couldn't perform them on stage anymore, as he was out of breath due to his weight. Sometimes during shows, he would have to take breaks while his hype man kept the crowd engaged. So they stopped touring entirely. Afterwards, he rarely left the house. He would go weeks without stepping foot outside. They would tell him, "Let's take the kids to the amusement park." And Pun would respond, "How am I supposed to do that? I can't even walk." They offered to get him a motorized wheelchair, to which he responded, "Oh yeah, Pun in a motorized wheelchair. How cool." Just the thought of that was embarrassing to him. He didn't want to be seen in public in that state. All weak and frail, can't even stand for longer than a minute. And he was now a superstar, so people recognized him everywhere he went. All eyes were on him. He didn't want to get laughed at or belittled. Some of his friends would ask him to consider weight loss surgery like a gastric bypass, but he would laugh it off and dismiss it. So he continued staying at home every day, watching TV, while his condition gradually got worse and worse. People would bring food to his doorstep, and he wouldn't even go to the door to bring it inside. It was brought right in front of him to the table. His physical activity was limited to him going from the bed to the couch, to the toilet, then back to the couch, and then back to the bed to go to sleep. Rinse and repeat for weeks and weeks. By the end of March 99, Pun was so big that he had little ulcers all over his body, especially his belly. He weighed over 550 pounds. His legs were as gray as an elephant's trunk, and almost as hard as a rock. His wife had to bathe him in the kitchen with a water hose, cause he didn't fit into the bathroom. His toilet was put in the kitchen too, so he would defecate at the same place he ate. His bed was in the dining area, and his chair was a black seat taken from a van. He needed a lot of help just to survive. And although you could tell Liza preferred not to, she still catered to him hand and foot. She would clean him, wash him, help him on the toilet, help him to dress, basically helped him to survive. He couldn't even sleep properly because he had problems breathing. If he sat down, it was hard for him to get up again. And sometimes he would even fall asleep in the middle of conversations. He would often feel physical pain, back pain, lung pain, heart pain, leg pain. His feet and sometimes even his sides would hurt. So he was a complete wreck. Getting him to do any type of physical activity was a challenge, especially when you're dealing with someone as stubborn as Pun. And the more he gained weight, the more depressed he got. According to Nicky, Pun knew that he was going to die soon, and that's why he was supposedly trying to prepare his kids for the outside world by teaching them boxing very early on, before they even went to school. There was blood on the boxing gloves of the kids. He would wake them up at 3 in the morning and make them box each other, kinda similar to how his stepdad treated him, with him coming into his room late at night and making him do push-ups. Looking back, you could say that Pun more or less turned into someone that resembles his stepdad in many ways. He was abusive, very strict to his kids before they even started going to school, and instead of being addicted to drugs, Pun was addicted to food. So it's not like he became the exact opposite of the person he hated the most. He became a more likable and empathetic version of him. You could still tell that he would die for his kids and wife. He loved playing with them, and they were his whole world. In mid-June 1999, Pan, his friends and family got together to go to the cinema and watch the movie Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. This was one of the very few times he got out the house, and Pan was really excited to see it. It was a comedy movie, so he thought it would cheer him up. Cause the past few months he was in terrible condition, especially with him gaining over 100 pounds in less than a year. In one particular scene, there was this character called Fat Bastard, who opened up about being sad because of his weight.
I can't stop eating. I eat because I'm unhappy. And I'm unhappy because I eat. It's a vicious cycle.
Everyone in the cinema was laughing, except Pan, who started crying, cause he saw himself in that character, feeling every word he said, especially the part where he said that he's sad because he can't stop eating, and that his unhappiness forces him to eat, which once again makes him unhappy and makes him eat more, a vicious cycle that he can't get out of. Pan said that it was like watching himself on screen, cause everything that the character said was exactly how he felt about himself. The whole cinema was laughing, so he felt like everyone was laughing at him. He was now almost 600 pounds heavy, and his health was so bad that everyone around him thought that he was slowly dying. People offered to take him to the doctor to get him checked, and he would reject it, saying that he doesn't want anyone to see him go there, cause that would make him look quote-unquote weak, frail and uncool. He valued the opinion his fans and haters had of him over his own health, risking his life to keep up his reputation and image. He wanted people to see him as a strong and powerful gangster, not as a sick and frail loser who has to go to the doctor because he's too fat. He was embarrassed by even the thought of it, so the doctors and his family had to find a way around that, get him checked without anyone seeing him. They managed to sneak him into the doctor's office through the back door, without anyone noticing. And during the consultation, the doctor scared him to death by saying that he could die at any moment, and that it's a miracle that he's still alive. After that, he enrolled in a weight loss program at Duke University in North Carolina. Some people call it a fat farm. Pan wanted to lose weight badly, but it was very hard for him. He said that the food there was disgusting, and that the serving size wouldn't even fill up a 5-year-old child. But there he found a new hobby, which was swimming. He learned how easy it was to move around while being in the water. He could move around very easily, as if he's not overweight. That reminded him of the days when he was younger and more active. It not only gave him hope, but also made him see progress.
It's hard work, baby. I just lost 100 pounds. I'm trying to live. I ain't going nowhere. I'm staying alive, baby.
Pan spent a month and a half at the Fat Farm, where he finished his sophomore album Yeah Baby. He had already started working on it in early '99 when his health started to go downhill. They had to bring a bed to the studio and let him record while laying on it. But with his health worsening, they had to take a break, and then continued at the Fat Farm. But compared to his first album, you could notice that he really had problems with his breath control. And that's obviously because he had breathing problems throughout the recording process of the album, which ended up slowing down his signature flow. After losing about 100 pounds, he begged Fat Joe and his family to allow him to quit the program and go back to New York, telling them that he learned what to do, promising them that he'll lose the weight on his own, and they fell for it, allowing him to leave the Fat Farm against the doctor's advice, because they had planned to let him stay there until he's down to around 200 pounds. So he still had to lose around 300 more pounds. Still morbidly obese and in mortal danger. But he missed New York and talked his way out of the program. And shortly after, he unfortunately once again lost control, while having everyone convinced that he's doing alright, cause he had just lost 100 pounds, which was a huge achievement. He was carrying the achievement around like a trophy, trying to convince people that he can still lose weight if he wants to, shutting everyone down who's worried for him. With all the yes men around him, it was also very difficult for him to self-improve and change his ways, especially when you are as respected as Pun. A lot of people felt like they weren't in a position to tell Pun how to live his life, especially with him being a very stubborn man that only listens to himself. He also didn't want his weight loss journey to slow down his rapping career, so he went right back to the same routine he had in '98, when he gained around 150 pounds in no time, all while working on music and building his career. One of the first songs he recorded after coming out of the fat farm was a track about his mother called Mama, which was actually intended for the album After Year Baby, his third studio album Endangered Species, which later became a compilation album due to Pun's untimely demise. His sister Nicky was there when they recorded the song. The two actually got into a little argument about their spouses. Pun asked, "Did your husband ever cheat on you?" And Nicky replied, "Before worrying about what is going on in my house, you need to worry about what your wife is doing when you're not around." She was speaking in reference to Liza's affair with the guy at the bodega in Bronx River, and also the long-time affair with Pun's paternal brother. Liza looked at her with the most angry face she had ever seen, while sitting beside Pun. In fall '99, he started regaining all his weight. He was once again manipulating everyone around him into buying him food, making them feel bad for him, and they gave him what he wanted, like a little kid with puppy eyes convincing his parents to buy him food from McDonald's, even though there's healthy food waiting at home. Some people he even threatened with physical violence after they told him to slow down. Others he would threaten to kick out the team. So he found ways to get what he wanted from everybody. Within just 6 months, he gained almost 200 pounds back. That's over 1 pound a day on average. So he not only passed the 600 pound mark, which made them sign him to the fat farm, but he also gained an additional 100 pounds and reached 700 pounds. 317 kilograms. He would pay his mother and Nicky a visit in Florida, begging them to make him mac and cheese. He ate 3 bowls of mac and cheese, a bunch of pork chops, and a few slices of bread with butter. That night, he once again got into an argument with Nicky after opening up about his stepdad abusing him decades ago. It was still bothering him during the last weeks he was alive. He told Nicky that she should remember that her father abused him, but she didn't remember ever witnessing any form of physical abuse. Nearly in tears and obviously frustrated, Pun kept asking her how she can't remember it. And Nicky responded, "Do you mean sexually?" And he said no. He told her to stop playing stupid, asking her why she never defended him. Why does everyone want to be defended, but no one ever does that for me? He was bothered by the fact that Nicky didn't remember something that mentally scarred him for life. And he felt like no one understood him. Mentally and physically, it was going downhill for him during his final days. Around 2 weeks before his death, Liza noted that his body began to deteriorate from the obesity, and that when he ate, he frequently vomited, and his skin appeared unhealthy. Pun's wife supposedly said, "I don't feel Chris is going to be around much longer." And people used that phrase against her after he passed away 2 weeks later. Around that time, Pun asked Liza what she thinks of having another baby. Cause Pun wanted a huge family with as many babies as possible. He loved kids, loved playing with them and raising them. But Liza felt like it wasn't the right timing. They had enough problems already. And his weight didn't make it possible anyway. So he promised her to lose weight and get healthy, so that they can have more kids. He wanted to start swimming again, to burn calories, just like at the fat farm. On February 5th, 2000, 2 days before Pun passed, he was supposed to perform on NBC's Saturday Night Live, together with Fat Joe and Jennifer Lopez. But he didn't appear due to illness and because he didn't feel comfortable appearing on TV weighing 700 pounds. He was actually spending time with his family at the Crowne Plaza Hotel in White Plains, New York. Today the hotel is called Sonesta White Plains downtown. They had rented a suite for a couple weeks and were staying there while their home was being renovated. The hotel owners allowed them to stay in the pool as long as they wanted, and he just loved swimming with the kids. This is actually the last footage of him alive, playing with his kids in the pool until late at night, 4 in the morning, February 6th, which was his last full day on Earth. I love being in the pool, cause I don't feel my weight. I feel normal. I can run around, I can jump. I can move like I used to. He really envied people who could walk and run normally. People would approach him and say that they're jealous of him, cause he's such a huge superstar now. And Pan would respond that he envies them for being able to walk, saying that he would give up his fame if he could get his health back. On February 6th, Pan went back in the studio to record a couple more songs for the album After a Year Baby, which again he wanted to call Endangered Species. And then in the evening, he spoke to his sister Pina about a possible weight loss surgery. He said, "Pina, tell me something. You think that stomach stapling thing, you think it really works?" And she enthusiastically responded, "Yes," cause she didn't expect him to ever think about it again after the last time they spoke about it a year ago, when he backed out of doing it cause he was too scared. He said, "I think I want to do it. Well, Chris, I'll do everything I got to do. I'll call the doctors tomorrow. On Monday when I get back, I'll call the doctors. I'll figure out where, what you got to do, how much it costs, and we'll do this. You'll come and stay in Florida?" "Yeah, I'll come and stay in Florida. I'll come and stay with you. You're going to take care of me though, right?" "I'll take care of you. I'll do everything I got to do." "No, I'm just saying. You're going to have to help me through it if I do it." And she said, "I will do anything I'll have to help you through this. We're gonna do this? We're gonna do this. I don't want to sleep tonight. I want to stay up all night. Let's go to the pool." And she said, "My flight leaves at 6 in the morning. I'm going to sleep." And he said, "No, let's go to the pool." So they all went to the pool and spent time together through the night. Pan then went to bed very late and slept for one last time. On February 7th, early in the morning, Pan's sister Pina searched for a place to get the surgery done. She then called Pan's wife Liza at 9 a.m., telling her to wake up Pan, cause she found a couple places for the surgery. But Liza didn't want to wake him up cause he was still exhausted from all the swimming the night prior. He was tired and resting. 2 hours later, at around 11 a.m., Liza called her back, saying that Pan has trouble breathing. He asked for 8 glasses of water, as if he's dehydrated, and Liza didn't know what to do. Pina then told her to call the doctor, but he unfortunately was on vacation and couldn't come. They then agreed to wait a little longer and see if he'll feel better. 3 hours later, at 2 p.m., Liza had a weird feeling about it and thought that something bad will happen. So she told her assistant to take the kids to her mother's house. Pan supposedly told Liza not to call an ambulance, but she did it regardless cause she was scared. He was laying on the bed with his tongue sticking out, saliva coming out of his mouth. She tried to pick him up so that he can sit upright, but then he started shaking. Now this is the part that everyone disagrees on. According to Liza, who again was the only person in the room with him, she thought that he is dying on her. And the first thing she did was call Fat Joe, telling him that something is wrong with Pan. And this phone conversation supposedly took place at around 2 p.m. Joe, on the other hand, said that the call happened very early in the morning, with Liza supposedly saying that Pan is dead, not that he's dying or that he's sick. According to Joe, Liza kept saying, "He's gone, he's gone." And Joe then supposedly asked, "Where you at? Where you at?" Joe was in Jersey when he got the call. He rushed to the hotel within 15 minutes, Then there's Nicky's side of the story. She was in Florida when all this transpired. And she said that Joe got the call before Pan passed, and he was supposedly wondering why Liza even called him, instead of directly calling emergency. She also said that Liza did not give him CPR because Pan had foam in his mouth and she was disgusted. According to Liza, right when she hung up the phone during the call with Joe, Pan's pulse was absent and he stopped breathing. He suffered a heart attack and respiratory failure. And that's supposedly when the paramedics came in. Cuban Link was actually in the shower when his wife got the call. He drove directly to the hotel and saw him laying there. Fat Joe came in when the paramedics were still performing CPR on him. According to him, Pan was already gone, but they kept working on him, pumping his chest. They didn't manage to resuscitate him. Everyone sat around his body, and the EMS technicians then let them have time with him alone, giving them a chance to say goodbye to him. Everyone was overwhelmed. According to Cuban Link, Pan was laying on the ground for a long time. He even tried to wake him up, checked on him, and then went to the bathroom to wash his face to see if he's dreaming. Last thing they ever imagined was Pan losing his life. Joe went into a deep depression after that. At the hotel, they brought sheets and blankets to tie his hands and feet so that they can put him on the dolly and roll him out. He didn't fit on the gurney, so they had to get creative. They took out the bed and everything else inside the ambulance so that Pan could fit, and then drove him to the White Plains Hospital where he was pronounced dead on arrival at 3:53 p.m. He was just 28 years old and weighed 698 pounds, 317 kilograms at the time of his death. His heart and lungs were seriously damaged by his weight. His heart was 3 times its normal size, and his lungs showed signs of failure. They had begun to fill with fluid, a sign that his heart was working too hard, all caused by his extreme obesity. After finding out about her brother's death, Nicky called Liza, accusing her of killing him. "I know you killed my brother." And the reason she felt that way is because she remembered the talks of her affair, her previously expressing that she was unhappy with him and how she wanted to get away from him. But she was supposedly afraid that it would never be possible as long as he's alive. She also had him cremated quickly, against Pan's wishes, before the doctors could perform any further tests to find out more about his death. So Nicky thought that she did it on purpose, in the attempt of covering up the murder. But to this day, there's no proof to any of her claims. On February 11th, at the Ortiz funeral home in Brooklyn, everybody gathered to pay their respects to Pan and his family. Fat Joe supposedly paid for the entire funeral. Pan's uncle showed up and made a scene after seeing Joe standing next to the family. This was the same uncle that refused to help Pan when he was a little boy, kicked out by his mom, forced to be homeless. And his uncle told him to go eat rocks. Pan wore the mental scars inflicted by his family until the day he died. So Fat Joe got really mad. They were all partly responsible for Pan's death, never cared for him while he was alive. Now all of a sudden they want to pretend like everything was cool. "Who is this?" Pan's uncle asked while pointing at Joe. "He ain't family. What is he doing here?" "I know who you are," Joe said. "You're Pan's uncle, huh?" "I'm Fat Joe. I paid for all this." Joe started verbally attacking him right in front of his family, while Pan was laying there in the coffin. "Guess what? He told me just how big of a piece of issue you were. He told me when he was hungry, you gave him rocks to eat. Let me tell you something else. Talk to your family. Because I'll F you up in here, bro." Bad. Pan's uncle then calmed down. "I'm sorry," he said. "Yo, my man, get the F out of here," Joe answered. Pan's sister Nicky said that Liza didn't show any signs of a grieving widow, even added that she looked quite happy, as she smiled and had a laugh or two with some of her family and personal friends. Liza supposedly sat in front of the casket like a quote-unquote queen expecting checks from a lot of celebrity friends offering support for the family. Nicky was also bothered that Liza allowed 2 of her children to be there during the cremation ceremony, because Pun's kids were fighting over who will press the button first to start the oven to burn their father. They didn't know what was going on and turned it into a game. Nicky also wanted Pun to be buried and not cremated, so that everyone can visit his grave, but his wife was against it. A final autopsy was supposedly never performed. The cause of death was still pending, because the results of a toxicology test were not yet complete. Pun's sophomore album Yeah Baby was getting mixed and mastered by the time he passed. They released it on April 4th, 2000, 2 months after his death. It went gold after 3 months and later went platinum. Pun had also started to work on the album after that, which he wanted to call Endangered Species, but he was only able to record a couple of songs before he passed. So they decided to release it as a compilation album with some of his greatest hits and best moments, on top of the last tracks he ever recorded, including My World and Mama. The album came out a year later on March 27, 2001. Big Pun's story is one of brilliance, pain and power. He shattered barriers as the first Latino solo rapper to go platinum. Yet behind the success was a man overwhelmed by pressure, personal battles, and a system that failed to support him. His weight, his fame, and his past all collided, leading to a heartbreaking end that still haunts hip-hop today. But even in death, Pun's legacy lives on. In the verses he spit, the doors he kicked open, and the pride he gave to an entire generation of Latino artists. Rest in peace, Big Pun. A Bronx legend and lyrical heavyweight. One of the greatest rappers of all time.